Hey guys, I'm Dov, and today I'm back with more Total War Warhammer 2 multiplayer action. We're here today with Norsca, going to be taking on the Vampire Counts. This is actually a game I had played quite a few games here with Black Phillip as my opponent. He's been picking up the Vampire Counts, and as much as I am not a fan of the Vampire Counts for a few reasons, Black Phillip's still a good guy. I definitely wanted to help him learn the new faction, and even though I'm not the biggest fan of the Vampire Counts, I have still played them quite a bit over the years and do have some good experience on what to take. So this particular matchup, Norsca versus Vampire Counts, is a pretty interesting one. Black Phillip had been struggling pretty badly with it, and just to kind of give you guys some context here, he had been taking a build with the Blood Dragon on a Zombie Dragon. I don't remember exactly what else. I think like a Terrorgeist and stuff, but basically my advice to him was, you don't really want to take monsters against a faction that's themed around monster hunting like Norsca is, right? Instead, heavy cavalry is honestly the way to go, and the key is to clear out the supporting infantry before moving on to work on the monsters. And that is true of many factions. For the Vampire Counts, they often, because of their lack of ranged units, they often face kind of monster mash type strategies, and in that situation you want to clear out all of the supporting infantry and other elements first. Just try and win based on leadership and army losses and so on. You can see here I'm moving up my Marauder Javelins to do some skirmishing on this corpse cart. We've got an Unholy Lodestone, a regular distraction corpse cart, line of skeleton spears, grave guard, zombies up front. My force is pretty small. We've got Marauders, Berserkers, Throg, and the Soul Crusher in the center. A couple units of Famir Great Weapons, a Shaman Sorcerer Lore of Metal here. And just right off the bat, you can see these zombies and skeletons getting absolutely crushed. The Corpse Cart will come in and give the Vigor Mortis here, especially to the Grave Guard, buffs up their stats a little bit, does make them trade more cost effectively, and at 250 points, it is a regenerating meat bag of HP as well. You can see I'm trying to keep my Marauder Horsemen away from these Varix Reavers over on the side. Varix Reavers, honestly, is a super underrated unit in my opinion. They are very good. They have regeneration, decent combat stats all around, good charge bonus. They're kind of like a regenerating Reichsguard almost. Not quite as good at combat stats, but still. They are getting crushed pretty badly here. I just collapsed with all the Famir and other monsters, and you can see Black Phillip and I were actually in chat while this was happening, and I'm like, you probably need to move your knights out at this point. Granted, the Frostbite from Throg will slow these guys substantially. You can see they're down to only 47 speed there, so it's pretty rough for them to try and come in and take this engagement here, but he was trying to clear out all these Marauder Horsemen. Did clear out quite a few of them. There are still a few left in there. But, you can see we've just about ground through the tithe here. A lot of the zombies starting to disappear, but obviously the Grave Guard will trade reasonably efficiently with Berserkers, especially with the Corpse Cart in support there. So very good stuff. Over here, the Unholy Lodestone managing to pull through, and the regeneration is very key here. Just layering multiple healing effects. The reason being is that Norsca isn't great at attrition. They hit hard and they hit fast, but if you can weather that initial storm, a lot of the time they'll flame out relatively quickly. They're not the greatest in kind of a sustained grind-out fight. So obviously the vampires do excel quite a bit at that. And again, that was sort of my advice to Black Phillip. Don't go to the monsters. Instead, go for a more traditional, combined arms vampire. You don't really have any range units, so it's not truly combined arms, but, to take like knights, take, almost a more traditional medieval army. Not so much focus on monsters, but just more knights, infantry. The supporting corpse carts, especially important here, as they provide that melee attack and defense buff, and of course the regeneration, like I said. The regenerating regiments of renown as well, both the Varix Reavers and Sternsmen on the field here, both holding out, and you can see how the crumbling damage just isn't even enough. I mean, they're taking serious hits from the Famir, and that's, doing enough damage, but between the regeneration and the Corpse Cart, they normally would be able to just regenerate straight through all that crumbling, and even with all the damage they're taking from those Famir and everything else, they're still managing to hold out because of those multiple regeneration effects. So a few of you guys, quite a few of you actually, disliked the video, or last time I showed off the Vampire Counts, where I talked about how I'm not the biggest fan of crumbling. Planning more discussion videos about crumbling in general, just because, I mean, obviously, I want the Vampire Counts to be playable and balanced. Like, I don't hate them as a faction and want them to be terrible or anything. I think some people maybe mistook that, or I don't know. They were really complaining that I'm trying to nerf the Vampire Counts, and I understand the Vampire Counts aren't quite as strong in this patch as they were before. The nerfs that they've had, especially the summons nerf and the Invocation of the Heck nerf, did hit them pretty hard, but still, I think the problem of crumbling remains for not only the vampire counts, but for the Tomb Kings and the Coast as well. So I'm going to be discussing that a little bit further here. We'll discuss a little bit today and just more going forward, but yeah, at this point, the attrition is starting to wear through. You can see balance power relatively even, but again, every time these Blood Knights and the Varix Reavers charge in, they stay for a little bit, back out, rinse and repeat, and you can see, exactly like I was saying, the attritional warfare here is playing in the Vampire's favor. A lot of the supporting infantry is gone, and although these Famir are elite anti-large armor-piercing units, same with Throg, when they get isolated like this, especially by a unit like Blood Knights, because Blood Knights have a number of unit models, they can connect on a charge just like this. I have to say, Blood Knights are one of my favorite Vampire Count units. If there's any unit on the Vampire Counts roster that I'm a fan of, it's definitely Blood Knights. I am particular to heavy cavalry, as you guys hopefully know by now. But both the Varix Reavers and the Blood Knights, I'm not the biggest fan of the Black Knights aesthetically. The Blood Knights, though, especially when they get absolutely covered in blood like this, they do look pretty awesome. The Varix Reavers, while they're not the coolest looking unit, I'm not the biggest fan of their like red dresses that they wear, the Graveguard and the Black Knights. Oh man, Throg just whacks one there. They are a very cool unit thematically and in use. I certainly do like using them, even if they don't look the best. I don't know. What do you guys think? What's your favorite looking heavy cavalry in the game? I know we're getting a bit off topic here, but personally I think Grail Knights are my top, of course. Number 2 is definitely Chaos Knights. Chaos Knights with lances especially. And then number 3 is probably the Zittler's Reichsguard, honestly, specifically, because of the gold accents they have. They look great. Number 4 is probably Blood Knights, I'm going to be honest. Blood Knights are in the top 5. Just as a unit, I mean, they are by far the best shock cavalry unit in the game. I mean, besides the fact that they're one of the most expensive, I think they are the most expensive, besides a couple regiments of renown, but, I mean, super high charge bonus, they have Frenzy, 110 armor, really good combat stats, like really, really good attack and defense, anti-large, and of course, being on the Vampire Counts roster, they can regenerate unit models, which is something that no other sort of high-tier elite shock cavalry can do. So yeah, Blood Knights are the way to go in this matchup, and that was my advice to Black Phillip. Ended out working out quite well for him, and exactly like how I said, the attritional warfare played in his favor. You can see the Famir, Soul Crusher, Throg, all racking up a ton of kills, but just not being enough at the end of the day. Just the zombie summons, all the zombies that were actually brought here, all a ton of HP to have to cut through. We did finish off both corpse carts, but again, they have their own innate regeneration, so especially the one that only costs 250 points isn't the best use of resources by me. But the Blood Knights definitely did some heavy lifting. You can see many XP chevrons to go around, 58 and 72 kills against a relatively small Norscan army, so that's a pretty high number of kills there, and the XP chevrons definitely show that. So, yeah, why am I so averse to crumbling, I guess some of you might ask. Honestly, it didn't bother me at first, but because there was only one undead faction, and Total War Warhammer was just kind of new, you know, it was a new system and everything, but as time has gone on, it started to bother me more and more, the fact that crumbling is just... the undead don't take part in a game mechanic, right? So, just to give you guys some background, I played all Total War games when they were new, from the original Shogun Total War all the way up to Three Kingdoms, right? I played all of them when they were new. And leadership / morale has always been such a key aspect of the game, if not, I mean, obviously along with HP, the defining aspect of the game, right? You don't even have to kill your entire opponent's army, you just have to rout them. Crumbling is a problem because it's a sidestepping that game mechanic, right? And I get that thematically and like on tabletop, that's how the Vampire Counts and other undead factions worked, and I'm fine with that. I want them to have some unique flavor. I think it's cool the fact that they are undead, they don't feel pain, they just continue fighting until they literally crumble into dust. I think that's awesome. But I think it needs to be reflected better in Total War game mechanics, if that makes sense. Like, regardless of how it worked in tabletop, mechanically in Total War, it's just basically these three factions are immune to morale and like terror is useless against them, except that you don't get terrified. Like that unit won't get terrified, which is sometimes nice. But just in general, the fact that you know, crumbling units still fight at full strength is my biggest problem. So I feel like crumbling units, you know, they should keep fighting. They should stay there and continue to fight. You know, they don't feel pain or whatever. But if they're crumbling, they're specifically, what I've sort of thought of and what I'm proposing is that they should get a significant, maybe even a minus 100% melee defense debuff. And the reason being is that when you're chasing a routing unit, they don't get their melee defense, right? You still have to roll to attack, technically, when a unit doesn't attack animation. It's a roll to attack, right? And there is a base hit chance plus their melee attack, so there still is, depending on their melee attack, a possibility that they could miss. And, I mean, the max hit chance is 90%, so there's always a possibility that the attack could miss. So they still have to roll to attack even when you're chasing a routing unit, but they don't get their melee defense, right? So I was thinking crumbling units could work the same way, except they're continuing to fight, they're continuing to deal damage out, but their melee defense is 0. So the units which are fighting them only have to roll to hit without factoring in their opponent's melee defense, right? Because that's how the dice roll works. For those of you who are curious, I do have a video on how to read stats in Total War Warhammer. It sort of goes over the dice rolls and how all the mechanics exactly work for Total War Warhammer 2. I definitely recommend you check that out if you have questions. But just, I think that would be a good way of solving it, and it gives you sort of an interesting dilemma. It's like, okay, I could leave this unit here because I need it to hold this position for whatever reason, and it's going to die faster, and I accept that. Or this unit is important, I need to pull it back because it's about to take a huge damage spike because all its melee defense is gone, especially if it's an elite unit like Blood Knights or like a Graveguard or something like that. Like, okay, I need to pull these guys back to safety, get them back to like a supporting corpse cart, or maybe hit them with an Invocation of Nehek or something. Try and do something to stabilize their leadership so that they pop up out of crumbling. Now, I understand that that would be a pretty significant nerf to all the undead factions, so I would be fine with them increasing the leadership just across the board for all 3 undead factions a little bit, maybe like 5 to 10 per unit, depending on the unit, just so that they don't crumble quite as easily, because obviously crumbling would be a lot more punishing, but I think it would give you an interesting choice. It would just make crumbling in general more interesting, and make it certainly less boring, because right now my biggest issue is just that it's, from a game design perspective, it's kind of boring. As a veteran Total War player, it bothers me that they just are sidestepping like a major game mechanic, right? Like you literally have to wipe out their entire army, and that's just, I don't know, that's not how this has worked before. So I mean, I get that that's how the undead work on tabletop, which is why I'm not advocating them to have like regular leadership or anything crazy like that. Like, they obviously need to have some kind of crumbling mechanic. I just think that they could implement crumbling in a way that's more interesting. So hopefully I've expressed things a little bit more eloquently this time. For those of you who stuck to the end, thank you very much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, discussion, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button so every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.